they are disabled, even when government has a policy to help them, we feel that it is time that we take it up as a group in Parliament with the hope of getting the support of the rest of our colleagues to push the agenda to mainstream issues that affect persons with disability. That's my new advocacy.
But Doc, I'm quite surprised that even in Parliament you're forming advocacy groups when advocacy groups should be formed so that we can push you, the members of Parliament, to take some actions. You should be seen to be taking action and not to be advocating. And I'll give you an example. You just talked about access to public facilities by persons with disabilities. And I know that there is currently a law that makes it mandatory for any designer, any architect designing a public building to ensure that there is access for persons with disability. Again, the law provides a period of time within which public buildings that were originally not made to, customized for persons with disabilities, to make that available within a certain period of time. Many buildings have not abided by this.
In fact, that time has elapsed. So, as we speak.
So you shouldn't be talking. You should.
Well, I should, because if the institutions are not working, and elements who are within those institutions have become aware of that, there is nothing that prevents us from being advocates, even from within. And that is what we are seeking to do. So our work is to bring this pungently to the powers that be and let them know that we are reneging. We are disappointing the people that we are supposed to be serving, and we ought to do better. So yes, collectively, we are not doing what we ought to do, but that does not prevent me seeing that we are failing to become an advocate even from within, and that is what we are doing.
So you're failing? You have failed?
I am not saying it. It is obvious. Anyone who is listening to us, any person with disabilities would not be satisfied about the way and manner he or she has been treated in this republic, and that's it.
So I'm sure that persons with disability who are watching us now will be more excited to hear that the Member of Parliament for Bills of South, Dr. Clement Apaak, is not just advocating, that he has also said that tomorrow or Monday when they meet again in Parliament, he is going to remind his colleague parliamentarians that the period given for public buildings to, be redesigned to make access possible for persons with disability is abided by, and that person will be punished if they don't do that.
I've already started doing that. In fact, a group of us, we have about 20, and we've held a meeting with, the national leaderships of persons with disabilities. This was organized by site savers, and we're all there. We listen to them. We know where the issues are. We are collaborating with them to canvass. In fact, to show my commitment, before we rose, I filed a question to the Minister for Roads and Highways to find out why about 25 persons with disabilities who were recruited under the government policy to award employment to 50% of persons who man toll booths to persons with disabilities. 25 of them were dismissed under very questionable conditions. And I filed a question to the minister, and he came to respond. So I am not just talking the talk, but we are willing to do what? Walk the walk. There's a lot that needs to be done, but we are prepared to do that. Somebody must take up a cause, canvass it, advocate it, and bring it to the fore in order to get action. And that is what we are going to do.
Great.
So that's my new advocacy in collaboration with Dr. Mafo, Teresa Wuni, Daku and Newman. And we are from both sides, both from the majority and the minority.
Are you still a member of the Public Accounts Committee?
Yes, I am. I'm a member of the Education Committee and the Public Accounts Committee.
That's what I was coming to. So we know, and we've seen you in action because, of course, the GBC covers live the Public Accounts Committee settings and so on. But we've never seen, really, in the public space, the work that the Education Committee of Parliament does. What's your mandate?
Well, clearly, as the name indicates, It is the parliamentary committee that has oversight over any and everything to do with education, from primary, secondary, tertiary, professional. So anything that has to do with education is under the auspices of the committee as the committee that has oversight. So the minister, for example, would have to come to the committee, the director of GES, and all the other agencies. They will have to come to the committee to defend their proposals in terms of budget estimates. We then get to query them, to ask questions, to verify before we write a report to the plenary for approvals to be made in terms of allocations. So simply put, anything that has to do with teaching and learning, education in this country is the business of the Education Committee.
Well, so we'll stay a while longer on education, but I'm just curious, if you have the mandate, you have the power to invite the Minister for Education, for example, to your meetings to answer questions, what was the need for you to have gone onto the floor of Parliament, the chamber itself, to ask the minister to make available some information when you were a member of the committee, where you could have done that behind the scenes? You wanted to do that for public view,
well,
so for fame?
That is one option. Not for fame, but for public view, and for the public to also see some of the issues. Now, let me perhaps explain a bit more about the way the committee functions. The committee usually has a chairperson and a vice. And by our convention, the chair and the vice are drawn from the majority side. Then you have the ranking member and the deputy drawn from the minority side. So my ranking member is the Honorable Nochuko Toy, and I am his deputy ranking member. Before the committee can hold a meeting, it is the chairman who decides. If you have a chairman who has a good rapport with his ranking, and or the ranking and the deputy ranking, usually there is consultation, and it is easier for us to propose meetings and why they should be held. On the other hand, if you have a chairman and a vice who don't have a good rapport with the ranking and deputy ranking, it is very difficult for the ranking and his deputy to be able to bring forth agenda items or issues that would tell the interest of the chairman to call a meeting. And that is why sometimes we are compelled to file questions to the plenary and not hold certain discussions at the committee level. But be as it may, there are many instances where there are points of convergence, where the ranking and the chairman would sit together and agree that these issues have come up. For example, when you receive a petition, and we received a petition not long ago by the former students of the Ekropong School for the Blind, in protest of, some misconduct that they had alleged by the principal of that institution. I don't know whether you heard
yes,
that
I
issue.
know about that story.
So they petitioned the committee, and so a meeting was called, and we heard them out. You would also remember that earlier this year there was an issue of the teachers writing their promotional exams and how the results were communicated. Some were communicated to indicating that they had passed, others were communicated to indicating that they had failed, and there was a third category where they were told to bring their documents for verification. And so their interpretation was that they ought to have passed. Because if I have not passed, why would you need my verification? I mean my document to verify for what? So they initiated a number of actions and they petitioned the committee. The committee also heard them out. Now you can petition the committee directly, or you can petition the Speaker of Parliament. If you petition the Speaker of Parliament on any matter to do with education, what the Speaker does is to refer that issue to his committee on education to look at and then present a report to him for further and consequential action. So this is the way it works. But there are instances where you may want to discuss a matter that the chairman and the vice may feel that that issue is political and has the tendency of casting a slur or putting the image or putting government in a bad light, in which case they will find ways of circumventing and dancing around that your request. And so if somebody like me who knows the way the political game is played, having worked for a president for being in parliament for my second term, there are certain issues that you know, no matter what you do, for the chairman to agree to call a meeting on those would prove futile. So you then go on and then you file a question. And if the question is admitted by the speaker, the minister is then invited to come and offer his response. So it's not even just me. Believe it or not, there are people who belong to the majority side who have also filed questions to the minister based on challenges or issues that have come to them in the area of education in their constituencies. Say building of schools or school structures that have not been completed, and some of those general challenges that one can anticipate.
True, but in your specific case, there's that school of thought that you just wanted to score political points, especially in respect of the issue that had to do with the past question papers that the GS procured for students who were preparing for their final exams. 34.8 million it was. And after the minister answered your question, you are reported to have said you doubted his credibility.
Yes, I did. First of all, it is not wrong to score political points. I am a politician. That is what we do. We advocate issues. And if by advocating those issues, we get the political capital, there's nothing wrong with that. It is not a crime. And in fact, it happens on both sides of the aisle. I can give you several examples of my colleagues on the other side who did same when they were in opposition. But you see, I posed that question because as a member of the Education Committee of Parliament, I was never told in the committee in 2018, in 2019, when this procurement was done, how much it had cost the taxpayer to procure. So for the sake of accountability and for us to understand as a people the quantum of resources that we were applying to ensure the smooth operation of the free scenario school policy, I felt that it was my duty to find out. Because there was no reason why government could not have volunteered that information. There was no reason why the minister could not have volunteered that information. Because we all knew that the past examination questions had been procured and distributed. But nobody knew the cost to the taxpayer. And that was why I filed that question. And lo and behold, I filed two questions on the past questions. The first one was the questions that had already been procured and distributed to the students who wrote their WASI in 2020. And the result from the minister's response was that about some 33, slightly above 33 million had been expended to procure about just slightly above 500,000 copies of past questions. Now, I preempted, knowing full well that I will be told whether or not procurement had been done for 2021. I preempted that by filing a question asking the minister whether similar will be done for 2021. Lo and behold, he confirmed that indeed for 2021 past question had already been procured.
Yes, but
to the tune of the 34 million, slightly above 34 million Ghana cedis.
I've spoken with the Deputy Minister for Education on this matter, and the argument, if I understood him, was that, well, it's been done already, but that does not mean that every other year we're going to spend as much money on procurement processes, getting past papers, because then it would have been established.
Look, you see, even the concept, the idea of buying and supplying past questions to students is still a matter of debate.
Is it?
Oh yes.
Doc,
some educationists don't think that is the best way to go.
Doc, did you never use past papers?
Not in secondary school.
Really?
Certainly not. You can ask anybody.
No, I'm not asking if Nandom Secondary School where you attended.
I never did.
You as an individual never went out in search of, as a diligent student.
I never did. I didn't know where to find them.
You must have.
But honestly, I never bothered. It wasn't important to me. For my O levels, for my A levels, it wasn't important to me.
You are a PhD holder. That's an indication that you are an exceptional student. There are some who are not as blessed as you are, who would need that kind of direction.
You understand me? I am saying it's just a subject of debate. Because depending on the educationists that you speak to, there are those who believe that yes, there is no harm in giving students past examination questions and chief examiner reports to guide them in their preparation and revision to write exams. And there are those who also feel that the mere fact that this is happening breeds laziness in as far as the students putting in their maximum effort is concerned. And I'll tell you the truth, we are preparing for WESI 2021. I am already receiving reports from teachers who are telling me that they still have about 3-4 topics to complete with their students. But because the past questions have already arrived, the students no longer come to class. So that is why I am saying that it is still a matter of debate as to whether this is the best way to go, and if this is going to become a regular part of our secondary education. This is a question as a minister, and he couldn't give me a definite answer.
So if you under President Mahama, you were a presidential staffer, very close to him as well.
Well, that is what people say.
That's what I believe.
Yes, I was his errand boy, and I'm proud of that.
Okay.
That is what a presidential staffer is.
Well, I didn't call you an errand boy. I mean,
call myself an errand boy.
You were a presidential staffer, and you were close to the former president. And so many believe that if the NDC had won the 2020 elections, you probably would have been one of the main appointees.
Oh, yes, sir.
Had that happened, would you have advocated for, first of all, the continuation of the free senior high school, and would you then not have, if the suggestion had ever come up at any point, for past papers to be bought for students so it would guard them in their preparation for the examination? You wouldn't have endorsed it?
Well, I wouldn't have endorsed it. I don't think that is the best way to go. I don't believe that that is the best way to utilize our resources for the benefit of the students. And I'll just align that with the first question. The Free Senior High School, we have admitted publicly, I mean, His Excellency President John Mahama, myself included, and many in the NDC, we have admitted that it's a good policy. It is born out of the Constitution. The debate was whether we could do it one-off in terms of wholesale immediately, or we should do it gradually. We had said that given the conditions, we were adopting the gradualist approach. Indeed, we had started by taking some fee elements away from the prospectus of students. That was also part of the reason why we were augmenting already existing institutions by adding infrastructure and then building new senior high schools. But be as it may, Ghanaians opted for those who said they were going to do it immediately. But you see, even when they took over the reins of power of this country, the students who were in year 2 and year 3 were not beneficiaries. It was the students who entered year 1 in 2017 who began the free senior high school as we know it today. So, although they had canvassed and they had made it sound as though immediately they took over, education was going to be free at the secondary school level, that was not what happened. But be as it may, we said fine, the program has come to stay. It is a good policy. But the implementation has presented us with challenges which have the effect of negatively impacting.
Can you point to one policy that was ever implemented, whether the NDC government, or even before the Fourth Republic, where one policy was implemented without implementation challenges. There are always initial hiccups, and then we all learn from the mistakes, and then we do the cleanup.
But when you can anticipate the challenges, when you have been told that this would be the outcome, you ought to have taken the time to work at addressing them. And that is the issue that we have had with the current government and the current managers of the system. We have told them, and this was common knowledge, that we would have an increase in the number of students. It was bound to happen. And therefore, there was a need to invest in educational infrastructure. Do you know that the first 2 years of the program, not much was done in terms of expanding infrastructure, even after they had taken over the rest of this country?
But no, how long would it have taken you, or for that matter, how long would it take anybody at all to ensure that enough infrastructure is provided? The journey has to start at a point, and then you build on it gradually.
We have not disagreed.
Should we have waited until 2030?
We have not disagreed. But even as we speak, what is the record of expanding education infrastructure? Look, let me tell you, the 2021 budget, in fact, if I had known, I would have brought it. Government itself indicated that it had initiated from 1,119 educational infrastructure projects on various campuses across the nation.
True.
And they had indicated that they had completed only 539 in the whole period from 2017 to 2021. What does that tell you? I mean, truly.
No, he wants us to go back to this debate
about
the e-schools and the number you promised.
Well, we are out. We are out.
Yes, I know. Based on your experience, based on your experience and the things that you deliver,
5 years.
I'm sure you don't want us to go
5
back
years,
to that.
and we didn't have this type of pressure. We didn't have 1.2 million students, overcrowded, teachers being overworked, never having gone for a break except for when COVID came. We didn't have the magnitude of challenges that they did. So given that this was their policy, and given the magnitude of challenges, and given that we had hinted, they had ample time to have fast-tracked the expansion of educational infrastructure. And they did not. And yet, the Minister for Finance, based on the question I posed, tells us that government has expended some 7.62 billion in the implementation of the program. We collateralized that fund for 1.5 billion US dollars. And the government memo to Parliament was that those resources were being sought after. We collateralized that fund so that we can get money to immediately address the challenges that we are talking about. And yet, as we speak today, it isn't anything to write home about. So we are not opposed to the program, but we are saying that let's address the challenges. And when we say so, it is not because we are wishing the program ill, because it is our words. I have nieces and nephews. I have a son who is a beneficiary of the program, and they come from across board. But is that the best we can do for our future leaders? Are these the prime conditions that we can offer them? Certainly not. And this is our critique of what is happening.
Even pre-free senior high school, we had same challenges. Students were sleeping on the floor. Some dormitories were overcrowded. This is not new. And so back to my question, and forgive me that it might sound too basic, but
no, but
would there ever have been an ideal time to start implementing such a program?
No, I didn't argue on the issue of timing. We have gone past that. The program is essential. The argument now is what is the best that we can do to ensure that we get the maximum outcome from the program. And that is why we raise all of these issues.
Okay, in order for us to touch on the other issues,
but I was going to tell you what we were going to do. if we had won. Because that's about that.
Tell me.
I mean, you even amused me by indicating that if NDC had won, perhaps I would have been given some position.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't know I was ready, but well, I'll take it from you. But
no, go ahead.
Be as it may. So if you remember, up to the election, we had talked about completing all uncompleted structures dotted around campuses from Accra to Fumbisi. We're also going to invest massively a portion of our infrastructure fund that we call the Big Push, the $10 billion Big Push into educational infrastructure. And you know that many of the e-blocks that we have started, some were completed which should be put in use. They have not been put in use. But there are many that have not been completed. We're going to make sure that we completed all those as well. And we had met, in fact, John Dramani Mahama had engagements with the owners of private schools. And we had decided that we're going to bring them on board. Because they've always complemented the effort of government.
Which are you referring to?
We're talking about the 2020 election.
Okay.
So I'm talking about what we would have done to address some of these issues. So we're going to bring the private schools on board and to allow them to take some of the students. So by combining, bringing on board the private schools, completing uncompleted educational infrastructure, investing in new educational infrastructure, we believe that we could have brought the double track and its attendant negative consequences to an end within 1 year. And we could have done it.
Right. I'll move on to other issues. And I'm taking this from the GBC website. It says, despite an increment in the subsidized price from 96 cedis last year, and here we're talking about fertilizer, despite an increment in the subsidized price from 96 cedis last year to 106 cedis for a 50 kilogram NPK and 90 cedis to 100 cedis for urea, Bulsa South has not received even a single bag of subsidized fertilizer under the Planting for Food and Jobs program this year. And this is a quote attributed to you.
Yeah, that's correct. In fact, it is a very heart-wrenching issue. Anyone who knows Bulsa South knows that it is an agric-based society. We don't have any industries. We don't have any factories. I mean, besides private businesses, people opening their shops and maybe a guest house here and there. And those who work for the state, teachers, nurses, agric-extension officers, and of course, those who work at the assembly. There is no source of livelihood. There is no source of income except in the area of farming and animal husbandry. Our people have always farmed. And in fact, on the basis of the government program, Planning for Food and Jobs, many of them have extended the acreage that they used to cultivate. So you have people who hitherto would cultivate about 4 hectares or 4 acres, now doing 6 or 8. Because they were made to believe that the inputs will come to them in a timely manner at a subsidized price. As we are speaking, this crop season, not even one single bag of subsidized fertilizer under the Planning for Food and Jobs has gotten to Bulsa South. And as a result of that, many smallholder farmers, peasant farmers if you like, who are the backbone of the Bulsa South economy, and indeed even the backbone of the Ghanaian economy, are crying because they have planted their crops 2 months into the farming season and they are yet to even apply 1 dose of fertilizer. Any agronomists, even with the traditional people.
So Doc, sorry, where are you getting your information from? Whilst preparing for this show, I wanted to do the recordings and bring some of the voices on air, but unfortunately, technology failed us. It was raining. 2 farmers said they have received fertilizers. Where are you getting your information from?
From where?
From Upper East region.
It's Upper East Bulsa South. That is the problem.
Okay, so
you see,
if
let me explain.
Yes,
let me explain.
Yes.
The way the program is supposed to work, as far as I understand,
Right,
is that the state finances the importation of fertilizer. Then when the fertilizer comes, there are distributors. And the distributors are supposed to take this fertilizer to the regions and to the districts. That's the way it's supposed to work. Now we all know the government itself has admitted that this year there has been challenges. And they attribute the challenges to COVID when the agric minister appeared on the floor of Parliament. And he himself, the agric minister, had indicted the Minister of Finance to the extent that he said to us and to Ghanaians in Daily Graphic that the reason why there was a delay in the distribution of fertilizers was because government through the Ministry of Finance had failed to pay fertilizer importers. Then the other reason why he assigned to the lack of or shortage of subsidized fertilizer was smuggling. These were the three principal issues that he raised. So it is not the case that there's fertilizer. As I said,
right,
the fertilizer is available. But people who come from where I come from don't have the wherewithal to go to the open market and buy a bag of fertilizer for 180, 200 Ghana cedis. They cannot. They thought they were going to get the subsidized fertilizer that you just quoted. So yes, there may be fertilizer in Upper East, but I can tell you that as far as Butcher South is concerned, my people are not benefiting from fertilizers under the planting for food and jobs. So, and I get my information from the farmers,
no problem,
from the people, from the farmer associations.
I get you, Doc, but the quote that I read from you, attributed to you, it's actually a full article. It's that you wrote.
I have a tendency to write, and I would always write.
And our website captured that and distributed to the rest of the world. But then the question is, again, I'll return to the first issue. You're a member of Parliament. You have direct access, so to speak, with the Minister of Agriculture. You can question him in the House of Parliament. You go and write this. It's for public displays. It brings no. Again, you're talking about walking the walk, and not here. You were just talking the talk.
Oh man, you see, Parliament and parliamentary proceedings are not available for everybody. Not everyone has the time, or will take the time to follow parliamentary proceedings. But nonetheless, I can tell you that this is a matter that I raised on the floor of Parliament. My good self and the Honorable Mama Yaga, the same week that the minister went public, the Minister for Agric, indicating that it is as a result of the failure of the Ministry of Finance to pay fertilizer importers that caused a shortage. Ayaga and I stood on our feet and we caught the eye of the Speaker. The Honorable Ayaga began by making a submission and calling on the leadership of the House and Mr. Speaker to consider inviting the minister to the House the preceding Monday to come and tell Ghanaians why we are having this issue of fertilizer shortage. I stood up and I complimented what he had called for, and I even indicated that I was being bombarded with calls from my own parents, Mr. and Mrs. Azundem, who are still alive, had called me to ask me to do well to get them at least 10 bags of fertilizer from Accra and to bring it to them for them to apply, because they couldn't get fertilizer at a subsidized price in our region. Upon these submissions, the Deputy Majority Leader, the Honorable Afenyo Markin, rose and intervened, and he suggested that we could come not necessarily by way of asking that the minister be summoned, but by way of filing agent questions or agent statements. I wrote a statement. In fact, some of the content that I used for my article was from the statement that I wrote. And then Honorable Ayaga filed a question The Thursday before we rose, that was last week Thursday, the minister came to the floor of Parliament to respond to Ayarade's agent question and another question which was filed by the Honorable Dafiamabo. It was during that response that the minister indicated that some 260 million had been made available to pay fertilizer importers, and that emergency meetings had been held. And as a result of those meetings, fertilizer supply and distribution in the northern sector had improved.
Right.
But that same day, I still got calls that as far as Busa South was concerned, the situation had not changed. So it was on the basis of that I wrote this article to amplify what had transpired in Parliament, which was not privy to many people at a time where the issue had not been resolved. And in fact, I like to write, and I can write. It's a tool, and I use it for the benefit of the people. If I'm going to write to bring the plight of my people to the powers that be, I think it is a compliment. That is why my people have sent me to Parliament, because they know I have a lot of tools in my arsenal that I can use to champion their issues and to canvass their concerns.
Has anything changed since then? Have you?
Well, I got a call from somebody at the Ministry of Agric, and I'm engaging the person tomorrow. The initial indication is that Busa South may be suffering this fate because there are no suppliers specifically assigned to Busa South. So I'll have that conversation with the young man tomorrow.
All right.
And I'm hoping that the issue will be resolved.
Doc, permit me to go on social media and engage some of our viewers who are interested in the discussion so far. Good evening, Honorable Dr. Apaak. It has been a while. Keep on the good work. The people of Busa South are so proud of you. This is Joseph Amwabil Vagden. Okay, so technicians, I think you need to work on a problem that one person has identified. He says the sound is not as clear as he wishes that it should be. Okay, the Caesar Alexander Lionel, you say, for what? One-on-one with Dr. Apaak, for what? So GBC will not stop working as NDC staff. A state broadcaster always happily promoting the opposition, shaking my head. Okay, so the Caesar. Dr. Apaak is a member of Ghana's parliament. We've invited him here. We've invited a number of other members of parliament.
Dr. Mustafa Hamid.
In fact, Dr. Mustafa, even the president has spoken on this very show. And just 2 days ago, we're in touch with the education minister and realized that issues of education did come up. We got in touch with the deputy education minister. He should have been here yesterday. He couldn't make it, and we'll have him next week. We are, and even if you're a member, a supporter of the MPP, you should be happy that under the watch of the MPP, the state broadcaster is able to give space for all sort of voices to be heard, and that should be a plus even for you, that you are not interfering with what we do here. And I think that's that should be a plus for you rather than for you to complain. In any case, Dr. Apaak is as a huge personality as anyone for us to have a one-on-one with him, not specifically on any specific issue. I'll go on WhatsApp now. Many of my friends sending me messages on WhatsApp. Woman, very good evening to you. It's good you brought someone like Dr. Apaak on your show this evening. He has been very passionate on the issue of Rosewood, but so far you haven't touched on that. Indeed, I was coming to that, Ibrahim Yahya. Okay. I want you to ask Dr. Apaak if he's aware that in as much as he's speaking about Rosewood, that many of the chiefs, even within his own jurisdiction, are complicit in the activities of the illegal loggers. Doc?
He says Rosewood,
yes,
and whether I am aware.
The chiefs are
complicit. Not as far as I know. Not my chiefs. I obviously cannot be 100% sure, but from what I know, I don't know of any chief in my constituency who has a company that deals in Rosewood, or who has sent people under his authority to go and cut rosewood trees, or who has been a beneficiary in terms of monetary inducements from these cabals. I don't know of that. But if he does, he ought to file a complaint because it's an illegal activity.
But so what is it that is so peculiar about Bilsa South that day in and day out we have reports of illegal logging of rosewood and so on?
Well, it's not just Bilsa South, I must say. It is a number of, districts. So there are portions of Bilsa North, definitely Bilsa South, Sisala East, Sisala West, Wa East.
Wa East, yes. Around the Busunu area.
Yes. Then you come to Yagaba Kubori and Mankargu area. So it is that belt. That is where it is happening. And I must say that many of the off reserve rosewood trees, they finish them off. Now they are entering into the reserve. And that is what is happening. And if you know the nature of the geography of that area, you know the reserve, it runs across from Y East all the way Sisala East, Sisala West to Bilsa South, all the way to Yaba Kubori. And that is supposed to be protected. That is where they are now doing the damage. They have finished all the off reserve and they are now entering into the forest reserves. And that is why sometimes I have no reason but to believe that there is connivance with elements within the Forestry Commission, because they are supposed to be in charge of protecting our forests. So how is it possible that these persons are able to enter the forest, to cut the logs, find a way of coming to Accra, to apply for permits, go back and cut them when we say the activity is illegal? I mean, clearly, somebody somewhere is either intentionally looking the other way to allow it happen, or knows it is happening and would not do what he or she knows ought to be done because that person is a beneficiary. So I've always talked about official complicity, and I believe that to be the case.
Are you a Christian?
Yes, I am.
A good one?
I am a very good Christian.
Why are you opposed to the construction of the National Cathedral using rosewood which would have been seized from these illegal operators?
Well, Moment, I am not opposed to the National Cathedral. I am opposed to how the idea of the National Cathedral came to be and how the narrative has gone from a personal pledge to now a national responsibility. We all know that the idea of the National Cathedral was mooted by the current president, where he had said that should God grant him his wish, should God show mercy on him by allowing him to become president, he would show his gratitude, paraphrase, by building a cathedral to honor God. That was personal. Well, be as it may, God indeed granted him his wish. He became president, and the processes began. But it looks as though the president is now asking the rest of us, contrary to the pledge that he made to God, to assist him to fulfill his pledge to God. That was not what the president told God, as far as I know. In any case, why even the cathedral is to be cited? I had a problem with that. Many Ghanaians had a problem. This was an area that was housing institutions.
Look, I thought we've gone past that conversation.
No, but it's necessary to give the background. But I'll summarize it.
Right.
Yet, the president and his men decided that they would rather bulldoze and destroy buildings at a cost to the state for a cathedral, when the cathedral could have been built on the outskirts of the national capital to even ease traffic and make room for, if you like, some development wherever it was going to be sited. Fine, that has passed. Then the decision is then made to announce on the floor of Parliament that Ghanaians should contribute 100 Ghanaian cedis a month to help finance the cathedral. Somebody's personal pledge.
Voluntary contribution.
Yeah, but if it's voluntary, why do they have to make it on the floor of Parliament? That is the People's Assembly. Don't you see the subtle pressure that announcing that within that context?
I don't feel pressurized.
Well, you don't know.
I don't feel
very well. Ask other public sector workers. The conversations going on in the back rooms, even national service personnel, ask them. But be as it may, then the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, based on an expose that I brought before, because I got a tip-off that some 5 containers of rosewood were at the Tema port and were being prepared for shipment. So, as I always do, I wrote an article and I published it, which thankfully got the attention of the nation and got the attention of the minister and his deputies. So the authorities at the ports put what we call seizure notices. And I went on to file questions to the minister on the same container. After I raised the issue of rosewood when he appeared before the Public Accounts Committee. Quite literally, I was harassing the minister to take action. So then he comes to announce that indeed action has been taken. The ministry has impounded the 5 containers. They were going to move the containers from Tema to their depot in Achimota. That was when he made the announcement that those 5 containers and any other rosewood that will be confiscated will be donated towards the construction of the National Cathedral. And I said, no, I don't think that is fair, and I don't think that is right. First of all, I don't know whether those who are in charge of the National Cathedral project had made a request to the minister or had written to him seeking to use rosewood as part of that construction. I don't know if you know.
No, I don't know, but we can't tell.
Very well.
Yes.
So that is my initial question. And secondly, the source of this rosewood is largely in the area that is most deprived in this country.
True.
Socially, economically, you name it. You go to schools and students have no furniture to sit on. So I then make the moral argument, like I did when the late John had suggested that impounded rosewood was going to be burnt. I repeated the same moral argument. I said, look, where this rosewood is being stolen from, and given that the people are going to bear the consequences in terms of climate change, soil fertility, to do with the water table, erosion, they are going to bear the consequences. So why do we want to punish them twice? If their natural resource has been stolen and we've been able to seize that, why don't we use that resource in a way that will benefit them and to enhance the future of the children from those communities? So let's use the impounded rosewood to make furniture and supply to the schools in that rosewood catchment area. So this is my argument, and I still stand by that. I think, I am not God, but I believe that God would find my proposal on how to use the rosewood much more acceptable than the proposal being made by the minister.
And if the minister doesn't listen to you?
Well, they are in government.
Yes.
And so he works as a member of the executive. He will do as he pleases. But at least I have made my case. And I believe that they should consider the proposal that I have made. It makes sense. I believe it's the right thing to do.
But why did you leave academia to join politics? Is there something in politics that's...
well,
there's a lot of... there's money in politics.
Well, it's not about money. Well, I'm not a rich person. I mean, anyone who knows me knows that. It is just by dint of goodwill. People believe that I have something to offer. They believe I'm a good advocate. They believe I'm a decent politician. So they come to my aid. I don't have personal resources to do most of the things that I do.
People fund your
people
campaign.
People support me.
And in return, what do they expect?
Nothing. But I'm very lucky. That is why I can speak freely on any issue and walk away.
People come donate money to you for campaign. For example,
Freely.
in 2020, they gave money. Had your party won and you had become minister for whatever sector, that these persons would come looking for contracts, and that will not influence
Well,
you?
I don't take things from people under conditions. I've never done that. If you give it to me willingly, fine, I'll take it. But if you're going to give me this phone and say, I am giving you this phone, and should you become this, I'll come back to you for, some favor. Then keep your phone. I don't do that. It has never been my style. I mean, that is the way I've always been. But being in politics, I believe that I've always dabbled in politics somewhat. Because I started as a bellboy at Wa Community Day School. Then when I was transferred to Sandema Secondary Technical School, Form 2, I went on to become Azant Law House Prefect. Then when I went to Nandom Secondary School, I became the Entertainment Prefect. When I made it to the University of Ghana, well, it wasn't official, but I became the Deputy Chief Vandal.
Oh, you
in
were.
the Great Commonwealth Hall.
You were.
A very powerful hall. And if you can lead vandals, then you know you have some good leadership qualities. When I traveled abroad to Norway to do my MPhil, I was the president of the International Student Union. I was serving on the university board. When I went to Canada to do my PhD, I was the president of the Graduate Students Union. I was elected as the president of all the students of Simon Fraser University, 25,000. I was superintending over a budget of 3 million Canadian dollars. And I was serving on the board of governors and the Senate. So with all of this, having come back home, it was natural that I would make myself useful. And you remember I started with the Forum for Governance and Justice.
Yes.
It was during my work as a convener that, I caught the eye of my party leadership. And they started assigning me other responsibilities. So
Politics is better than academia?
no, it is not.
But you left.
I miss academia. But I feel that I had to advocate, particularly for the people of Busa South, and to bring their issues to the fore, and also to take up those issues that many don't even pay attention to. Look at this issue that I was just telling you about with the persons with disabilities. Obviously, I'm not the first politician, but why is it that I'm taking it up? So I'm a different type of politician. I am not into politics for personal gain. I am into politics because I believe I can make a change. And the day I'll be convinced that I can make a change, I'll walk away.
And go back to academia?
I'll go and teach. Okay. I've always liked teaching.
So the teaching is the second choice now. Forgive me, but
for now. I mean, I used to go back and teach a class every semester. But my workload, being in leadership, in parliament, the educational sector, is a very active sector, very demanding. And the issues are many. So all the time, you must know and touch base. I mean, the UTAG strike, the implications for the students, the pre-tertiary teacher unions. They've also served notice to the government that if by the 30th of September, government does not address the challenges, that could also become another challenge. The new curriculum, the lack of textbooks. So there's so much that I have to deal with. That makes it impossible for me to go and teach a class that I always taught once a year.
The 1 hour has come so quickly. Just like that. Whilst preparing for this program, we wanted to speak to you on a specific matter, but then my producers thought that, look, Man has spoken on so many issues. Just bring you on, have a conversation. I really enjoyed this conversation, Doc, and I do hope that in the very near future you'll be back here so we can look at some specific matters that would have been happening maybe at that time.
I'll do that.
Thank you so much.
Say thank you for hosting me, and forgive me for being a true on your show.
Thank you.
I'll restate myself.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you very much. We've been speaking with Dr. Clement Apaak. He is the Member of Parliament for Busa South constituency, also Deputy Ranking Member on the Committee for Parliamentary Select Committee on Education. He's also a member of the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament. We spoke to him concerning a number of issues. We'll be back here tomorrow with another edition of